In a quiet residential neighborhood on the outskirts of Boston, soft sounds drifted from an old house along Maple Street. The morning mist hung heavy in the air. Many families had lived on this century-old street for generations, and the Millers were among them. Catherine Miller awoke to the same peaceful silence she had known for 38 years in her childhood home. Even now, after her parents had passed away, her bedroom remained filled with warmth. Next to her bed stood her mother's cherished knitting chair, and by the window, her father's Boston fern gently swayed its fronds. "Good morning, Dad and Mom," Catherine smiled as she greeted their memorial photographs in the living room, her daily ritual. George and Martha Miller's gentle smiles watched over her, just as they always had. The photo was from their silver wedding anniversary, her father proudly wearing his high school teacher's badge, her mother beaming in a homemade apron dress. On the old wooden table lay an opened envelope from the night before, her sister Jessica's wedding invitation. The text danced across the gold-embossed luxury paper with a hint of irony. In the corner was the logo of her sister's bakery, Sweet Jessica's. "Here's hoping you two will find a wonderful someone." Catherine picked up the invitation with a deep sigh, unable to keep from remembering the day 3 years ago when her parents suddenly left this world. That morning had seemed just like any other. Her father was busy preparing for his final lessons before retirement at the high school, and her mother had hurried out, saying she had plans to test new menu items at her sister's bakery. Then came the phone call from the city police that evening. An accident at an intersection with a large truck. Both died instantly. Catherine could still feel the sensation of holding her screaming sister in the cold hospital hallway. "Catherine, I want you to look after Jessica." The accountant Mr. Thompson's voice reading their father's will still echoed in her ears. Their mother had entrusted her with the same wish, to support her sister. Until the very end, their parents had thought of nothing but their daughters. Catherine added fresh water to the vase in the living room. White carnations sparkled in the morning light. "I understand," she whispered to their memorial photographs. Opening her closet, she took out a modest navy dress. Wearing this wouldn't overshadow her sister's special day. She decided to pin her mother's small pearl brooch to the collar. Standing before the mirror, she studied her reflection. Her simple lifestyle reflected the humility she had inherited from her parents as a Miller daughter. Her makeup-free face bore her father's intellectual gaze and her mother's kind smile. Though her sister often called her lifestyle too plain, it was enough for Catherine. Unlike her flashy sister, she had chosen to live quietly in their family home, cherishing her parents' memories. "Jessica, I pray for your happiness." Catherine quietly steeled her resolve. It was also a vow to keep her promise to their parents. The grand ballroom at the Ritz-Carlton Boston was bathed in champagne gold light. Crystal chandeliers sparkled from the ceiling like stars, enveloping the entire venue. Massive floral arrangements adorned the walls, filling the air with the fragrance of roses and callas. At the reception desk, the bride's friends, known as popular patissiers on Instagram, were handing out special wedding cookies from Sweet Jessica's to the guests. Each cookie was decorated with the initials J and M and designed to be photogenic. "How beautiful, Jessica. Simply gorgeous. Just like a princess." Guests in glamorous cocktail dresses kept approaching the bride with compliments. Jessica glowed like Cinderella in her custom Vera Wang wedding dress. Around her neck gleamed a Harry Winston necklace, a testament to her success as a social media sensation bakery owner. A piece of their mother's beloved lace was supposedly sewn into the dress hem, though hidden in an inconspicuous spot. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for waiting. We will now begin the wedding ceremony of Jessica Miller and Michael Johnson. The MC's voice rang out. As guests were directed to their seats, they began moving to their assigned tables. At the front of the grand ballroom stood a massive red rose arch, beneath which the bride and groom's elevated seats were prepared. The tables were draped with pure white tablecloths of Jessica's own design, set with luxury dinnerware rimmed in gold. Each table had a theme: influencers, media, patissiers, reflecting Jessica's social circle. And tucked away at the edge of the venue was the family table, as if an afterthought. At that moment, a woman appeared at the entrance. Catherine, in her modest navy dress with the small pearl brooch. Her mother's keepsake caught the chandelier light with subtle brilliance. The atmosphere in the room seemed to freeze for a moment at her arrival. Oh my, that plain dress, at a wedding? That's the bakery owner's sister? She's nothing like I imagined. Whispers spread through the venue. Catherine walked quietly to her seat as if she couldn't hear them, carrying herself with a strange dignity amid the commotion. Her expression tensed briefly as she noticed the place card at her table. There, in decorative gold lettering, was written high school graduate/poor person. Around it, other place cards bore glamorous titles like popular patissier, top influencer, and media mogul. Found it. Big sister's place card. Jessica's voice rang out deliberately loud. Her friends gathered around her began to giggle in unison. Smartphone cameras flashed here and there. How do you like it? The perfect introduction for you, right? After all, you just graduated high school and hole up in that old house. Jessica approached Catherine with a broad smile, her pure white dress train gliding elegantly across the floor. Behind her followed her friends, supposedly commanding hundreds of thousands of social media followers. Their laughter echoed through the venue as if choreographed. Everyone, don't laugh too hard. She might cry. Jessica's words made the laughter in the room grow louder. Camera flashes continued, and more people raised their smartphones, as if this scene were the wedding's highlight. The groom, Michael, showed a slightly troubled expression but maintained a faint smile beside his bride. Catherine quietly took her seat and removed her smartphone from her bag. There was a strange dignity in her movements. Not the latest expensive model, but an older one. However, when she opened the screen, her finger movements were sure and unwavering. Amid the venue's chaos, she tapped the screen and dialed a short number. Hello, Mr. Thompson? Her voice was surprisingly calm. The venue's commotion seemed to fade into distant noise. Please bring those documents now. Yes, all of them. The moment she hung up, the atmosphere in the room changed. Jessica's smile stiffened slightly, and a murmur arose among the influencers. The groom looked around in confusion, while the MC anxiously studied the ceremony schedule. Catherine gazed at her parents' memorial photographs on the altar. There, George and Martha Miller's gentle smiles remained unchanged. Her father's proud bearing as a teacher, and her mother's warm, embracing smile. Determination settled in Catherine's eyes. Dad, Mom. I've kept my promise all this time. But please wait a little longer. It seems it's time for Jessica to learn the truth. The sound of the venue doors opening echoed through the room. Heavy footsteps resonated across the floor. Mr. Thompson walked slowly, carefully cradling a well-worn leather briefcase in both hands. His expression carried the unmistakable authority of a 30-year career as an accountant. Behind him, the late afternoon light streaming through large windows cast his figure in an almost divine glow. "Mr. Thompson? Why are you here?" Today is. Jessica's voice trembled. Her expression, framed by the pure white wedding dress, gradually filled with anxiety. The influencers around her had stopped their loud laughter, looking at each other in confusion. The smartphones that had been taking photos minutes ago were all lowered now. "I apologize, Ms. Miller. At Catherine's request, I've brought the important Miller family documents." Mr. Thompson bowed politely and approached Catherine. His briefcase bore a modest engraving, "Miller Family Documents, Confidential." The aged leather surface showed deep character marks from years of use. "Big sister, what is this about? Today is my wedding day. What are you plotting on such an important day?" Jessica's voice mixed anger with anxiety. Her profile, at that moment, overlapped with their parents' memorial photographs. Her mother's features were strangely prominent in her profile just then. "As the owner of Sweet Jessica's, I have my pride. And now, here." Catherine stood up slowly, cutting off Jessica's words. The venue lighting caught her mother's pearl brooch, giving off a quiet gleam. "Everyone, may I have your attention for a moment?" Catherine's voice was surprisingly steady. The MC hurriedly brought her a wireless microphone. Catherine accepted it and stood before their parents' memorial photographs. Her bearing was filled with an authority reminiscent of her father when he stood at the podium in his high school classroom. "I apologize for taking time like this on my sister Jessica's special day." The venue fell silent. The groom, Michael, watched Catherine intently despite his confused expression. Next to him, his college mentor serving as the best man sighed deeply, as if sensing something. "However, I felt I must convey our parents' final message here." Mr. Thompson opened his briefcase. From it, he withdrew an aged envelope. On top, in George Miller's elegant handwriting, was written, "To our beloved daughters." Though the ink had faded somewhat, their father's feelings seemed to still dwell in those letters. 3 years ago, our parents suddenly passed away in an accident. Father taught at the local high school, and mother kept our home and raised 2 daughters. They were proud people. Father's last lesson was about teaching his students the importance of honesty. Catherine's voice quietly resonated through the venue. In her eyes mixed nostalgia and determination. Each word carried deep reverence for their parents. And until the very end, they continued thinking about their daughters' futures. Especially Jessica's. The next item Mr. Thompson produced was an old ledger. On its cover was written, "Sweet Jessica's financial support records." Beside it was a handwritten note from their mother, "Quietly support Jessica's dream." "Jessica, did you know? The monthly rent subsidies, equipment investment funds, and influencer marketing expenses all came from the inheritance our parents left. Mother was thinking about your bakery recipes until the very end." A murmur went through the venue. The color drained from Jessica's face. Her hands gripped her dress fabric tightly. That's not all. Catherine took up a new stack of documents. They contained contracts with famous influencers, detailed marketing strategy plans, and monthly advertising expenditure statements, all neatly arranged. Every document bore Mr. Thompson's signature alongside the Miller family seal. Sweet Jessica's rising popularity. Increased social media exposure. Media interview requests. All were arranged by me through Mr. Thompson, following our parents' wishes. With their hope that your dream would come true. Small cries arose from among the influencers. Many of them had not known until this moment that they had been contracted behind the scenes. Even their social media posts had been part of a carefully calculated strategy. The advice on developing new bakery menu items, actually from Mother's old recipes. The business consulting, through Father's network of former students. Everything was to keep our parents' final wish to support your sister. Anne. Catherine paused for a moment, meeting Jessica's eyes. To show your true talent to the world. Jessica collapsed into a chair. Her expression showed shock, confusion, and above all, deep regret. Large tears fell from her eyes. Big sister. Why, so much? Incoherent mumbles escaped her lips. The guests watched in stunned silence. A heavy stillness filled the glamorous wedding venue. The chandelier light illuminated the place cards on the table. The words, high school graduate/poor person, now cast an ironic glow. Mr. Thompson took out the final envelope. It was opened slowly, as if bearing the weight of destiny. His movements showed reverence for the truth about to be revealed. From his hands emerged a glossy photograph. A modern yet dignified office on the top floor of a high-rise building. Clearly visible was a woman seated at the central desk. This is... Jessica's trembling voice echoed through the silent venue. The woman in the photograph was unmistakably Catherine. However, this was not the plain sister who had appeared at today's wedding. Instead, it showed someone else entirely, dressed in the finest suit, facing her desk with an expression full of authority. This is the CEO's office at Miller Media. Mr. Thompson's voice resonated with weight. The venue gasped. Miller Media was a global social media marketing company. Among influencers, it was known as the Divine Hand. It can't be. Jessica's eyes widened. The expressions froze on the faces of the influencers gathered around her. Several of them suddenly remembered that they had direct contracts with Miller Media. I made a promise. Catherine's voice was quiet yet filled with strong will. A promise to our parents. To support my sister's dream. But never to show it openly. So you could grow through your own strength. She stood before their parents' memorial photographs and took a deep breath. Father, as a teacher, taught me the importance of watching over each student's growth. Mother taught me that love sometimes requires strictness. New documents circulated through the venue. They were contracts between Miller Media and famous influencers worldwide. Sweet Jessica's promotional campaign was just a small part of that massive network. I started Miller Media right after college graduation. Guided by Father's words that education exists in different forms. A new photograph appeared. A small office from the early days. There stood a young Catherine. My first success was in educational content marketing. It started with wanting to help father's colleagues. Then gradually it grew. Her voice caught slightly. Now we have offices in 50 countries worldwide. But I chose to live in our family home with our parents' keepsakes. Because that's my foundation. The venue's screen displayed Miller Media's achievements one after another. Global educational projects, social contributions, and numerous innovative marketing campaigns. Behind all of them was Catherine's presence. Sweet Jessica's success is just one of those results. I've just been arranging the environment from behind the scenes for your talent to be properly evaluated. Jessica sank to her knees. Her pure white wedding dress spread like a large flower petal. But why? I've always. Large tears rolled down her cheeks. In her eyes floated memories from childhood. Remember? In elementary school, the day I was approved to skip a grade? Catherine gently approached her sister. You were crying. Saying, "Big sister is amazing, but I can't do anything." Jessica's body trembled slightly. The memory came back vividly. But that wasn't true. You had wonderful talent. When you stood in the kitchen with Mother, you were truly alive. I believed in that talent. Someone's sobbing could be heard in the venue. The groom, Michael, watched his fiancée with a complex expression. In high school. When I went to university and you went to the local college. Something definitive broke inside you. But that was wrong. Everyone has their own path. Catherine knelt gently before her sister. I created a company. But you created a place that warms people's hearts. A bakery isn't just a shop. It's the center of a community. She gently took her sister's cold hands. People who come to Sweet Jessica's are healed by your bread and your smile. That's a value that money can't buy. Tears flowed endlessly from Jessica's eyes. Big sister. I'm so sorry. Catherine quietly embraced her sister as she stammered out her apology. Mom and Dad had just one wish. For us to live true to ourselves. And to support each other. A deeply moving atmosphere filled the venue. In the midst of the lavish wedding decorations, the sisters' spiritual connection radiated a certain light. Their parents' memorial photographs seemed to smile gently. 1 year later, in spring, a fresh breeze blew through Sweet Jessica's. New greenery on Maple Street was visible through the wide-open glass windows. On the shop's walls hung George and Martha Miller's memorial photographs, watching over customers warmly. Here's today's new creation. Jessica smiled gently while arranging freshly baked bread in baskets. Beside her, her husband Michael silently brewed espresso. In the years since their wedding, they had worked together on renovating the shop and developing new menu items. This bread dough is based on Mother's recipe. Her voice, explaining to regular customers, mixed pride with gratitude. She no longer fussed over social media follower counts. Instead, she cherished the heart she put into each loaf of bread. A small community space had been set up in one corner of the shop. On weekends, they held bread-making classes for neighborhood children. There, she passed on the skills and love inherited from her mother to the next generation. Oh, Catherine. You're early today. At 3 in the afternoon, her sister appeared at the shop. Though still modest in appearance, she carried an unmistakable dignity. While she traveled the world as Miller Media's CEO, she always returned home on weekends and stopped by her sister's shop. This had become the sisters' new bond. The board meeting ended early. It was about the new educational support project. Catherine took her usual seat by the window. From there, she could see the flowers of the garden trees their mother had loved. Jessica's special café au lait and croissant were brought to the table. This croissant, I tried putting my own spin on Mother's basic recipe. Jessica sat down too. These weekend tea times had become precious moments for the sisters. It's delicious. But this folding technique is different from Mother's. Jessica nodded happily at Catherine's words. Yes. I added my own touch. I realized I don't need to copy anyone anymore. Sunlight streaming through the window danced on the table. The sisters each picked up their cups. Next week is the anniversary, Catherine said quietly. A color photograph of their parents sat on the table. Since the wedding day, Jessica had begun displaying their parents' photos in prominent places around the shop. Yes. This year, I want to prepare handmade offerings with everyone. Dad's favorite rye bread and Mom's memorable apple pie. Catherine smiled gently at her sister's words. Their parents' memorial photographs still hung in the family home. But now when they joined hands before them, their hearts no longer sank in sorrow. I'm starting a new project at Miller Media too. Catherine mentioned while taking a sip of her café au lait. It's a support program for small local shops, so talented people can pursue their dreams in their own way. Jessica's eyes grew moist. It was proof that her sister was now extending to others what she had once done for her. Catherine. I'm truly sorry. At the wedding, That's enough now. Catherine gently took her sister's hand. What matters is from here on. Our new way of walking forward. The aroma of freshly baked bread wafted through the shop. At the register, Michael engaged in warm conversation with regular customers. Outside the window, old trees on Maple Street were stretching out new buds. Dad, Mom. We finally found it, Jessica whispered. The true meaning of living as ourselves. Their parents' memorial photographs seemed to smile gently. In the spring sunlight, the small bakery called Sweet Jessica's was wrapped in genuine happiness. That night, Catherine quietly joined her hands before the memorial photographs. Dad, Mom. Have I fulfilled my promise? There was no answer, but in her heart, her parents' warm smiles lived on eternally. It had become sure proof of the Miller family's new story.